Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the latest round of protests against military rule in Sudan see demonstrators clash with security forces and draw warnings from the US and the EU that a government appointed without credible civilian input will not be supported internationally. Also, state capture Part 1. The first findings of an inquiry into corruption under former South African President Jacob Zuma finds that state decisions were shaped by private individuals and interests during his 9 years in power. And too many cooks may spoil the broth, but 54 cuisines combined with the skills of the right chef brings out the best in continental gastronomy. We sample the Pan-African offerings of award-winning experimental chef Dieuveil Malonga at his Kigali restaurant. But first, in Sudan, the latest round of protests against the military were met with tear gas and sparked clashes with security forces. Rallies were again held in Khartoum and neighbouring cities on Tuesday, 2 days after Prime Minister Hamdok stepped down. About 57 people have been killed since generals staged a coup in late October. The country's faced political turmoil since, and the US, Norway, the UK and the EU have all warned Sudan's military that they will not support a new prime minister appointed without substantial civilian input.
Security forces fired tear gas into a crowd of protesters in Khartoum as tens of thousands of anti-coup protesters took to the streets in cities across Sudan.
The protesters are facing off against the state. You can hear the sound of those on the front lines being fired on. They're facing this abuse for the sake of a free, peaceful, and just state.
Fueling the most recent wave of unrest, the resignation of Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok on Sunday. He was ousted in the October coup, only to be reinstated a month later in a deal with the military. But Hamdok was unable to form a cabinet, saying he couldn't reach a compromise between the ruling generals and pro-democracy leaders. The uprising is similar to a movement that ousted longtime autocrat Omar al-Bashir 2 years ago. Now protesters are hoping the same kind of pressure can bring about a return to civilian rule.
Our three present demands after the coup are no negotiations, no partnership, no compromise. That's in addition to the demands of the revolution, which are freedom, peace, and justice.
Elections in Sudan are scheduled for July of 2023, and the opposition is calling for a civilian government to lead the transitional period. But the military generals have rejected those demands and continued their deadly crackdown. Dozens of protesters have been killed since the October coup.
South Africa's acting Chief Justice has handed over the first part of a report into corruption under former President Jacob Zuma. The inquiry, headed up by Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, looked into allegations of widespread graft over Zuma's 9 years in power. He refused to cooperate and is currently in jail for contempt of court. Zuma's denied allowing the powerful Gupta business family to influence policy, but the probe found that private interests did influence state decision-making. It's recommended a national charter against corruption in public contracts, the creation of an independent anti-corruption agency, and greater protection for whistleblowers. Following installments of the inquiry are due by the end of February. Current President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised a break from the murky dealings of the past.
It was the people of this country who, in their various formations, stood up to what they saw as acts of gross wrongdoing and abuse of power. We have a collective responsibility to ensure, in the end, that the findings of this commission and the recommendations of the commission not only mark a decisive break with the corrupt practices that our country has experienced in the past, but that these recommendations provide the foundation for greater transparency, for accountability, and ethical conduct within all state institutions and across society as a whole.
Well, staying with South Africa, the fire that destroyed parts of the country's parliament was finally contained on Tuesday after a two-day battle. A man who was arrested on Sunday has appeared in court and faces charges of breaking and entering and arson. Nadine Theron tells us more.
The man accused of setting fire to Parliament intends to plead not guilty. Zandile Christmas Mafe's case was postponed in Cape Town on Tuesday. He faces charges of housebreaking, theft, 2 counts of arson, destruction of infrastructure and possession of an explosive device. It is not known what type of explosive device he had on him at the time of his arrest. He will remain in custody for 7 days until his bail application. Mafe is from one of South Africa's poorest townships of Khayelitsha, and his legal representative took on the case pro bono.
What interest would that poor man have in Parliament? Banning Parliament. How would that person get access to Parliament to start with? And how would he know where to go in Parliament and ban? It's clearly a scapegoat. We have a scapegoat here in front of ourselves. This chap denies.
For who?
I said this is the failure of executive and legislature.
The defense is intending to apply for bail. The state will oppose bail. And more charges are likely to be added as the investigation continues.
We hoping and we think that there may be other people that are involved, but at this stage the focus is still on this one until investigation can take otherwise.
The fire was only contained hours before Mafe's court appearance on Monday evening around midnight, after firefighters had been fighting the blaze for almost 48 hours. The extent of the damage done to the building where Nelson Mandela was voted in as South Africa's first democratic president is yet to be established. The valves of the fire sprinklers were reported to have been closed, but the Speaker of Parliament says that security recommendations were implemented.
97 people have been freed from their kidnappers in northwestern Nigeria. Security forces have been ramping up operations against armed gangs behind a spike in abductions for ransoms in the area. On Monday, one operation saw police rescue 68 people from the Shinkafi area in Zamfara State. Samuel Okoye tells us more.
The abducted victims have spent up to 3 months in captivity. The police commissioner in Zamfara State, Ayuba El-Kana, said there were 7 pregnant women, 19 babies aged between 2 and 7 months, in addition to 16 children aged between 2 and 7 years. A bandit leader, Bello Tuji, was said to have abandoned 68 of the captives in the bush following ongoing military operations around his camp. The other 29 captives were rescued from the custody of another bandit leader. The rescue of the 97 captives is the latest success story in an ongoing joint operation involving the police and other security agencies, especially the military. Some bandits, including 2 key leaders, are believed to have been killed in recent operations. The police said several notorious bandits have been arrested, while lots of weapons have been recovered. The bandits are well-organized armed groups operating mainly in northwest and north-central Nigeria. Within the year, they abducted about 1,000 school children, forcing many schools to close down. Hundreds of other people were kidnapped either from their homes or while traveling. Not even the military was spared of their atrocities during the year. They shot down a military plane and attacked Nigeria's largest military academy, killing 2 officers and abducting another one. The bandits are estimated to have made millions of dollars last year in ransom. The bandits are believed to be forming an alliance with jihadist groups like Boko Haram, raising fears that they could transform into extremist groups. For now, it remains unclear how far the offensive against the bandits will go.
Our Sam Olokoya there for us in Lagos. In other news, Pan-African culinary visionary Dieuveil Malonga has a pantry that features ingredients from across the continent. The award-winning chef mixes flavours and ingredients from Africa's 54 nations to create new offerings that represent cultures and corners from across the region. Shirley Sitman has a sample.
How about some achu soup or Cameroonian grill? Those traditional dishes don't usually look like this. They've been revisited by chef Dieuveil Malonga. Raised in Congo, he trained to be a chef in Germany and France, where he mastered his skills, before returning to Africa, where he pushed the boundaries of Afrofusion.
Why we call it like Afrofusion? We can get spices from Nigeria, can be like black pepper from Nigeria. You can have like banana plantain from here in Rwanda, or you can get sometimes meat from Burundi. Like all of these elements come from different countries, and we create a recipe on this element we have.
The chef has visited 38 African countries where he has met with grandmothers, including his own, bringing back culinary secrets and dozens of spices.
When I get this old recipe and I bring it in my laboratory, like we call it like laboratory here, and we try with my chef to give something modern touch, or sometimes we're inspired by this grandmother recipe to create something new.
The goal isn't just to make excellent food. Malonga and other chefs have created a network of 4,000 African chefs. Together, they have pushed Afrofusion in international events, believing their cuisine belongs at the top of international gastronomy.
That looks amazing. That is, though, all we have time for on Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.